I think one of the biggest challenges children face today is constant distraction. Attention spans are shrinking, screens are everywhere, fast-paced content constantly competes for attention, and many parents are genuinely worried about focus, concentration, patience, and long-term learning habits. Which is one reason I think more families are beginning to ask an important question. Can music actually help children concentrate better? And honestly, after years of teaching students and watching children develop through music education, I believe the answer is yes. But probably not in the simplistic way many people imagine. Because piano lessons do something deeper than simply teaching children music. They train sustained attention, listening, patience, mental coordination, emotional regulation, and the ability to stay mentally engaged over time. Well, in today's world, those qualities are becoming increasingly valuable. So in this video, I want to talk about how piano lessons affect concentration, what we genuinely observe in students over time, and why music education may matter more now than ever before. I personally think one reason this conversation matters so much today is because modern life constantly fragments attention. Children are exposed to short form content, notifications, ping, constant stimulation, rapid entertainment, TikTok, shorts, and environments that encourage switching attention every few seconds. If you watch most of the content that is produced today, it's very short, and that is what engages the young minds. And over time, sustained focus becomes harder. Not because children are incapable, but because the brain adapts to constant stimulation. Which is why activities that require deeper engagement become incredibly important. And music is one of the strongest examples of that. Because music demands attention, demands presence, listening, timing, patience. Children cannot successfully play while mentally distracted. The brain has to stay engaged. Even something simple on the piano requires the brain to process rhythm, coordination, listening, timing, movement, and memory simultaneously. Which is one reason music becomes such a powerful concentration training. But what many parents notice outside the lesson itself is where things become really interesting. Over time, many parents begin noticing challenges outside the music lessons too. Children often become more patient with homework, more comfortable sitting with difficult tasks, and more attentive during learning, which is very, very important, and more capable of staying focused longer without needing constant stimulation. And, this is something that we've repeatedly observed at HIKARI School of Music and Languages over the years. Not because piano magically changes personality overnight, but because sustained musical learning gradually strengthens mental habits over time. One thing I have personally noticed is that music often teaches children how to stay mentally present, and that's increasingly rare today. I remember one student who initially struggled to focus for more than a few minutes during lessons. And I remember sitting with him and trying to teach him some things, but sometimes it was very, very challenging. He would sit and lose concentration after a very short time. But After consistent music training over time, the improvement in patience and concentration became incredibly noticeable. I think that child actually tested my patience. I'm a very patient person, but he tested my patience. But that paid off. And not just during music, but in learning generally. Because you'd hear teachers come and say that this child has improved a lot in the other subjects as well. But one thing, I think this is where music becomes very different from passive entertainment. One thing you need to remember is that watching content is passive. Scrolling is passive. But music is an active engagement. So a child must think, listen, respond, adjust, coordinate, and stay mentally involved continuously. And over time, that strengthens deeper attention habits, especially compared to activities that constantly encourage rapid distraction. Reels, shorts, TikTok, whatever, all those things. Something else I think matters enormously is the emotional side of concentration. Children focus better when they feel calm, engaged, emotionally safe, and genuinely interested. And music often creates that environment naturally, especially when learning feels encouraging instead of pressured, which is one reason emotional connection matters so much in education generally. And to be honest, I think this conversation goes far beyond piano lessons alone, because the future increasingly rewards people who can focus deeply, think creatively, solve problems, stay disciplined, and learn consistently over time. And you know what? Music naturally develops many of those abilities together, which is one reason creative education is becoming increasingly valuable globally. But at the end of the day, I don't think piano lessons simply teach children how to play music. I think they help children develop something much deeper, which is the ability to focus, to stay present, to think patiently, to persist through difficulty, and to engage meaningfully with learning over time. Those qualities, I believe, matter enormously today. So, if this topic is interesting to you, we've also written a much deeper article exploring concentration, music education, cognitive development, confidence, and child growth through piano learning. I'll leave the full article and additional resources from HIKARI School of Music and Languages in the description below. And if there are any other topics you genuinely like us to explore, whether music, creativity, language learning, confidence, performance, or future-ready education, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.